The idea came from Jim Simons himself. When we were walking together, he was discussing the talk that he would be giving on the subject of differential cohomology, and he began to explain the subject itself, and then said, "That sounds like a great title for a dance." And I said, "Well, it sounds like a great dance, period." And within 4 hours, we were on the road. We are going to start by going through the whisper sections in this space, and then chain 3 and through zoom 4, and just make sure that everything that we worked on earlier is going to be accurate in the space, and then we'll do a run of the piece.
Somewhat new way of looking at certain aspects of geometry, which is very abstract and involves calculus, of course, given the word differential. But it's some new constructions, or it's a new construction that I was one of the creators of about 30 years ago.
So he began to talk about the qualities of the theory, and he explained that the diagram was a hexagon, and that there were qualities topographically for the diagram, and he explained a lot about rings and donuts, and he was using a lot of character and quality and texture in his words, in his description, which made me visualize movement immediately, and the conversation just grew from that point on.
Here's a donut. Try and make a donut here. See the donut? You've all eaten donuts. Huh? Now, consider the surface of a donut. Could you, so just imagine it's a hollow donut. It's like a rubber tire. It's a tube, an inner tube, right? What could you do to that inner tube to make it look like the surface of a sphere? How could you do that?
Fill it in?
Well, no, I just want to move this rubber around. What could I do to this rubber to make it look like the surface of a ball?
Stretch it.
What? The answer is nothing.
I feel like the piece is in good shape. I say that aloud too much. I feel like everyone is starting to become not just a skeleton. There's flesh on the skeleton now, and there's some real depth, I think, being added in every day. It becomes a fuller piece, and it's exciting me. So I'm hoping that it's going to excite everyone else too.
Well, we have one phrase in particular that we call either the abelian phrase or the accumulation-decumulation phrase. And what we did was we created one movement for each of these 8 terms that were given to us and defined in description and preparation of understanding the diagram. And so we made these 8 moves, each one based on the word, and then we linked them together and we made a phrase. And then we had one person accumulate one move with each repetition of the phrase, and the other person takes a move away each time they repeat the phrase. And then there's a crossover of the movements being in unison. So we called it like the sum and the difference, sort of the accumulation and decumulation.
Basically wanted them to understand the most basic algebraic facts about some mappings and things like that. It didn't give a great deal of insight into the geometry, but at least it showed there was a pattern of mappings, and it was that pattern of mappings that I thought might make a good dance. This diagram that the different algebraic objects moved around the diagram. So that was the genesis of this.
You can't do something so intensely, so long, if it's not something you really believe in or something you have to do. They approach mathematics with artistry every day. You can't solve the problems without being creative. Mm-hmm. And so it was important to me, and to Kyla too, I think, to infuse that into the piece.
Oh, see?
I do go low. Yeah. Oh, we do the back step?
When I found out that the principal theme of the project was based on a mathematical theory, I was definitely really interested, because that's kind of a rare, I think, angle to come at dance, which is usually from more of a visceral and human place. And I know that they work from an emotional side. That's what they said, that's characteristic of their work a lot. So I was curious to see how they were going to kind of combine something that was a bit more calculated and scientific with something that's a bit more everyday and human. And I was interested to see how the rules of the math that they're dealing with was going to kind of dictate how we were going to make the movement, and how it would inform what we were doing.
So we started playing with like angles and lines, and how can how can we start to like delineate the geometry of the lower region of the stage, and we started just playing with these ideas and improvising. And then as people became more familiar with the concept, then we started pulling from that and started shaping that movement. And like transitioning between fluid and linear movement, or transitioning between heavy and light movement, and started incorporating that into their characters, because then as we go along, you see that the piece doesn't follow like a very dry, like, this is the math, this is what we're doing, but kind of takes it along. It's on a bit of a journey and a bit of a story. And so we started incorporating these elements that are, I suppose, intrinsic to the nature of this math into their characters. So then all of a sudden this character might be heavy, or this part of the stage, she might be really pulled to the earth, and later on she might be, feeling the effects of gravity less. Originally, when we were trying to figure out what kind of music we were using, we didn't even know we were going to use live music or recorded music. But we were playing with a lot of different tracks that we had in our computers. We started like really researching the string quartets, and then we knew of Sirius from the past, and we asked them, if they were interested, if they were free that day, and they were interested. So they sent us a bunch of their music that they'd already written, and we combed through those recordings for a few weeks and played them in rehearsal, and then started making decisions. Basically arcing the piece, after this track, what do we have to do to give the piece good flow? What makes sense with the storyline? And so through that, then we had a couple of other little holes that they didn't have already previously recorded. And so we asked them to compose.
The diagram of mappings, it sort of all goes in one direction. That is, it goes, well, from left to right, basically, as you go around, and you can go various paths, but it's always sort of moving from left to right. And, well, it's kind of difficult to only go in one direction on the dance floor, right? So, obviously, they had to resume their places or sneak back, or however that worked. And I suggested, I said, you could have day and night, where in the daytime everyone's going in the right direction. Then the lights turn off and everyone fools around and goes in the opposite direction. But I don't know how she exactly did it, but it worked out great.
If we think in terms of the actual dance, this is Chris, and this was Ying, and this was Gregory and Allison and Lonnie and Matt, and then Kevin and Francis were in the center. And we had, in our opening section, basically established the outside versus the inside, and then we went all the way around, and we had one of the scenarios where Chris went to Matt and they traveled down the diagonal as a conveyor belt, and then they accumulate with Francis and Kevin and then get crushed here, which is part of the rules of the diagram.
This is quite wonderful. I don't know if there's ever been a dance based on the theory of cohomology. My guess is there haven't been many. But let alone differential cohomology, which is quite a distinguished aspect of mathematics. But how this happened was this workshop. There is a workshop on differential cohomology, which is indeed a branch of mathematics. And I'm quite friends with Kyla and Aaron, who are the leaders of this dance company, whom you're going to see. And while walking with one or another of them, I started talking about this workshop coming up and how I was involved in that field, and I described this beautiful diagram that one draws to describe the various mappings and so on. And as we talked, I said, you know, things move around this diagram. One could even do a dance of some sort based on that. Well, they got quite excited at that idea. I don't know why. We'll see whether that was justified. And so Kyla and Aaron said, well, it sounds like fun. We'd love to create such a dance. And it sounded fine to me. So we did it. And in the course of that, the entire company got several hours of mathematics lectures. Now, that's really true. They really got some lectures about how things were organized in this diagram. So today is really their test to see how much mathematics they actually absorbed and actually how good the dance is going to be, and I'm sure it's going to be great.